follow your light, like follow what lights you up. So many people, I think, feel like they need to do what society says or their parents say or this or that, and they're ignoring that inner compass. And that inner compass is like guiding us. So if it's like animated in any way or lighting up in any way, as crazy as it seems, pay attention to it, because I think that's probably where you're supposed to go.
All right. So I'm so happy for another episode on Passion Love Pursuit podcast. I'm welcoming for the second time the beautiful and vibrant Jessie Golden. She literally is a light, and I can't express enough how much I love this girl, and just so great to see you face to face. I just love watching everything you do, and you inspire me, and you inspire so many people by sharing your story and all the wisdom you learn through your own trials and triumphs, of course. So Jessie Golden, welcome.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I'm so honored.
So just a brief introduction, just my introduction to you. So Jessie Golden, she's a devoted mother, wife, holistic health practitioner, yoga teacher, author, and the creator of the Golden Secrets, which is a holistic, sustainable skincare and wellness line that I personally have been using for several years, and I love it. Absolutely obsessed. I have all the oils, all the tools, and just to include in here, I have a special discount for you all that I'll include in the show notes. It's Erica, ERICA 10. So Erica 10, again, it will be in the show notes. So anyways, Jessie, welcome. So
thank you so much.
So where to begin, right? There's so many stories and so much we could touch on. So as I mentioned, let's just flow and go where this leads. Because I know regardless, you're going to share so much value through your experience and lessons. So you are one of my people, to say the least. As I mentioned, you so inspire me, and just by you sharing your truth, your vulnerability, your honesty, and also just the lessons you have gained through your experience is just so valuable that I think so many people could grab little nuggets from. And so that's what this episode will really be about. So for those of you that haven't experienced Jessie Golden, can you share with us, and this could go as deep as you want to go, who is Jessie Golden? Like, what was your journey in getting where you're at today to provide as much as you do to all of us?
Mm-hmm. I realized at a really early age, and I think a lot of people can relate to this, that people like would come to me with their problems and kind of like seek comfort or some kind of reassurance or healing. So I early on, like I would use things that happened in my own life. Like, for example, when I was young, like my parents divorced and my mom remarried several times. So I used a lot of like the experiences that I went through with that to have compassion for like what other people were going through. And so this whole thing, like what I talk about, like sharing my golden secrets, really started when I was young. It kind of became like this inspiration and this passion where I was like, oh, I can use like these experiences that I'm going through in my own life and share what I've learned with people and inspire them. And it could be like the simplest thing. But as I went through my life, like the biggest moment for me, the first biggest moment was I had my son at 25 unexpectedly, and I chose to have him naturally at home. And at the time, everyone thought I was crazy. And I shared that whole experience, and I did everything natural and breastfed and co-slept and attachment parenting, and everyone kind of thought I was like crazy because I was going against the grain. But there was a lot of people that found comfort in what I was doing. And they were like, wait a second. I was also a single mother, not by choice. And they were like, wait a second, like, how does Jessie make this look so easy? And I'm like, because you just do like what natural, like the natural way that like babies, I feel like, should be raised. It's not as difficult. My mom used to say, like, all you need is a boob and a diaper and you could pretty much go anywhere, and just like simplify everything. Not to say that parenting isn't difficult, but that was like the first experience where I was like, wow, I can really inspire women that it's not like the end of the world. If you're a single mother, you can still have a career and take care of yourself and have an amazing relationship with your child. And then when I was 29, when my son was 4, I got diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis completely unexpectedly. And I went through a whole healing crisis with that. And I was kind of in the public eye as a model. And a lot of people started noticing that I was ill, and there was like all these kind of whispers. So a lot of the companies that I was working with at the time, which were like all the new yoga companies that were just coming to birth, gave me a stage to kind of tell my story. I think they did it because it sold yoga pants, but it was the first time in my life where I got to have a voice as a model. And it was so empowering to be able to help other people, and share the tools that had worked for me to help me thrive despite this debilitating disease diagnosis. So it just kind of spiraled into this whole thing. And like you shared, it turned into it was a blog, and then it turned into a book, and then a skincare line. And I continue to be inspired to just share, to be real. I mean, with social media, it's really hard. We're on there and it looks like everyone's flying to Mexico every other day in Aspen. And you're like, what the heck is going on here? And I think it's really nice to just be honest sometimes and be like, look, I choose joy and happiness every single day. Just because I'm smiling on social media doesn't mean that I'm not going through trials and tribulations and tough stuff. So I think it's really important to share those moments every once in a while, to let people know that they're not alone, and it's okay. And like, we're all going through things. And that was a long answer to your question.
Well, like I said, there's so many layers to your story, and it's hard to really pull out one specific thing, because everything you've been through has got you where you're at today. So I know you had a dance career, which very much shaped your identity, as well as your beliefs and your thoughts that would go through your mind. I would love to touch on that, but also modeling has kind of the same type of message or the stories you'll tell yourself, because it's all about this perfection per se. And I've heard you talk about this before, and I think it's really good to pull out because of how that trained your mind to think through your dance career, and then how you had to shift out of that to develop and cultivate your self-love and self-worth. So if you could kind of touch a little deeper on that.
Yeah. I always say that being a ballerina made me actually bulletproof to the modeling world. I modeled basically my entire life. That's what I did for a living since I was young, professionally since I was 18. And a lot of people would ask me, like, how do you deal with the with people turning you down or being judged on the way you looked? And to me, it was a piece of cake, because coming from the ballerina world, it was so much more personal, because yes, you were being judged on the way you looked, but you were also being judged on how your talent was and how you could do, and trying to achieve this epitome of perfection that doesn't exist. And as I was going through a lot of my healing crisis, being diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis, I realized that I had a really, really negative critical dialogue. And I traced it back to growing up in the dance room. And if anybody has never been in a dance room, one of the walls, at least one of the walls, is floor to ceiling mirrors, so that you can look at yourself and judge every single thing you're doing. And then there's a teacher critiquing you. And then my mother was also the owner of the dance studio and my teacher. So I was getting it from all angles, and I was my worst critic. Like, it was never good enough. Nothing was ever good enough. Like, I would just judge myself all the time, and my reflection became everything. Like, I literally was used to looking in the mirror my entire life. I grew up in the dance studio. And I'm kind of circling around, but I discovered yoga when I was 18. And I remember the first time I went to a yoga classroom and there was no mirrors. And I was like, well, how do we know if we're doing it right? It was like a shock to my system because I was so used to looking at myself in the mirror. And that's when I fell in love with yoga, because I was like, oh my gosh, this whole entire practice is to bring you inward. And it's not about how you look. It's literally your own practice, non-judgment, rest easy if you feel like you need to come to child's pose. Like that was never anything that was discussed in ballet. You're not taught to breathe. You're taught to ignore every signal in your body, and you're taught to achieve this epitome of perfection that does not exist. So the good things that I learned from ballet are hard work and discipline and determination. All of those things are definitely still foundations of who I am and I love. But there was a lot of things that I noticed that I pulled into other areas of my life that were just not healthy. And the inner critic was definitely the biggest one, because as I realized, as I was trying to naturally heal myself, is it's like drinking poison all the time, because your thoughts become your reality. And here I was judging every single thing that I was doing and focusing on all the bad things instead of the good, you know?
I love that you pulled that out, that it's almost like you're drinking your own poison all the time, because it's this inner dialogue that we don't even notice. And until we slow down and be able to quiet our mind to listen, like, oh my gosh, these thoughts, like you don't even realize these thoughts. So I think a lot of people could relate to that, is like not even realizing how bad you talk to yourself. And I could really relate to staring at the mirror all the time, being in the career I've been in, the modeling world as well. It's like you're always looking at yourself. And unfortunately, I think that is the bad side of it, is that you tend to look at, well, as a woman, I could say mostly do this. We tend to look at the imperfections as opposed to those beautiful perfections that we just naturally have, like the light that shines in our eyes, or, you know, whatever it may be. So I can really relate to that. I'm sure a lot of people can, especially women. But I would love to know, so as you started noticing your inner dialogue, I think you've shared this before, that that was part of being, when you developed the arthritis, which I know it came all of a sudden and probably a complete shock to you. And I know you were bedridden for, I believe, a year. You share a lot of your story. So if people, of course, want to learn the depth of your story, you have it in your book. And also you shared just so much on your blog and everything. But to pull that out, so when you were diagnosed with the rheumatoid arthritis and you were bedridden, was that the catalyst that helped you develop and cultivate self-love, self-acceptance, self-worth? Like, what was that journey like?
Yeah, I mean, just to like touch on what you were just saying, like I think just having the mindfulness and being aware and being still enough and quiet enough that even if you're not saying these things out loud, noticing your inner dialogue. And a series of events happened to me to get to this point. And there's the simplest quote that I'm sure by now everyone's heard. It's like, if you don't listen to your body's whispers, it's going to start screaming. And I was ignoring everybody's signal because, again, that's what I was taught. I was bulletproof. I could get through anything by just going harder. And, you know, I was a single mom and I was working and I was doing all these things. So I always had a reason as to why I was tired. But as the rheumatoid arthritis progressed, I finally got diagnosed, and then it just started progressing rapidly, where nothing I was doing was working, until I was physically unable and forced. And as stubborn as I am, I think the universe chose that on purpose, because that's how it got ingrained into my spirit. Because the other thing too is, as a dancer, and at that time I was a yogi, my entire life I transmuted and dealt with energy and dealt with everything through movement. Dance, yoga, that's how I did everything. Now all of a sudden I'm the Tin Man and I physically can't move. So I have no choice but to tune in and to see what's going on the inside. And that's when I really started noticing that all my thoughts were negative. And I was also a new mom. Kaleo was 4 years old when I got diagnosed. And through him and through this dis-ease and through both of these experiences was like this birth of self-love. One, because I have this little human watching me, and if I don't show love for myself, what am I teaching him? And I also wanted to be around to be there for him. So through him, I kind of started learning about self-love. And also, gosh, what I always like to go to the inner child, like, what if I was saying these horrible things to my inner child or to him? Or so trying to have that same sympathy that I would for my 7-year-old self or for my 4-year-old son, for my grown-up self. And just starting to have that mindfulness. And I share this in my book, and I share this all the time. And it's just like the simplest technique. It sounds simple, but to practice it is another story. But once my son got old enough, even if he would say like, I can't play soccer, or he would say anything, I would say, why would you say that? And I'd kind of acknowledge that moment, see where that's stemming from. And then I would say, let's name 3 things that you can do. And it's just like that mindfulness, noticing it, acknowledging it, and then saying 3 things that actually benefit you and create the life that you want to create. So I'm still practicing. It's an endless practice of rewiring the brain. Like, we have to actually work out those muscles and neurons just like you would your bicep. Like, it's not something that you don't work out your biceps for a week and then like stop doing it. It's an endless practice.
Yep. And also to add to that is actually asking yourself, is that true? Like, is that really factual? Like that I can't do this, but I love that you say that. And also that you also add to that, that it's something you continue to practice, because it's like our brain is kind of wired to go to the negative, where our brain is wired to protect ourselves, from harm or anything. So it's naturally going to go that. So we have to train it to focus on the good, focus on love and all that. And so, yeah, I'm with you. Absolutely. And I know a lot of people relate to that.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
so for those that don't know, because I think this is so powerful for you to share this. So rheumatoid arthritis, for those of you that don't know how crippling it can be, and something that she deals with. I mean, I've witnessed it. I've seen the types of surgeries you've done. Like, I follow you. I see everything you do, right? Because you share it so openly, and it is something that you deal with. So for those that don't know, can you kind of share a little factual things about what you deal with and your experience with it?
Yeah. I hate the name rheumatoid arthritis because a lot of people assume it's osteoarthritis, something that you would get maybe older in life, or wear and tear. Like, anybody could get just regular arthritis. Rheumatoid arthritis is autoimmune and it's systemic. So it affects the entire body, not just the synovial joints, but all the organs. Um, uh, Normally, like 60% of people are considered completely disabled after 10 years. I'm at 15 years now. There's no cure, there's no cause. There are medications that are really intense, like immunosuppressants that you can take. Then that's the thing with chronic disease, and why I was so determined to try everything before I just said, you know what, I'll be on medication for the rest of my life. Because with chronic disease, it's an ongoing thing. It's not like you have a broken arm and you're like, okay, I'm going to heal this broken arm for a couple months, couple weeks, and then I'm going to get the cast off. With chronic disease, it's like, if you decide to go down this Western path, that's probably where you're going to end up. And a lot of the medications can cause other symptoms, which I've done. Like, I immediately, when I got diagnosed, I was scared, I wasn't educated, and my doctors convinced me to just go the Western route, because they believe that you can go into remission much sooner if they treat it aggressively. And right away, I knew this was going to happen, but the lines became blurred between the side effects of the medication and the actual disease. And that's when I was like, you know what? I'm going to go try everything naturally first, change my diet, empower myself, get rid of negative people, like just do everything I possibly can to heal myself naturally before I completely commit to this life. And that's kind of what inspired me to write my entire book, because I just went through this whole healing journey and discovered that there's not one pill, there's not one remedy. Like, you really have to be your own activist and your own doctor, and you have to constantly be open to new ideas and evolve, because what worked for you yesterday might not work for you today. And so I've just been on this constant wave of endless healing. You know, I say that I'm thriving with rheumatoid arthritis because I'm doing, I feel like, much better than a lot of people. I'm currently taking more of a holistic, non-toxic medication that I really believe in, that is fantastic. That's not talked about enough, and especially with rheumatoid arthritis patients. So yeah, rheumatoid arthritis has really, I choose to look at it as a blessing instead of a curse, because it encouraged me to become a holistic health practitioner. It makes me present every single day. I feel like I have this barometer that other people don't have. I am highly tuned into my body because I have to be.
Yeah.
So I choose to just look at the positives of it, you know?
Right. It's so amazing. And I think you've said before that it's been your greatest teacher.
Greatest teacher. It's the
Yeah.
most humbling,
Oh,
humbling teacher.
yeah, I could only imagine. And that's the other thing I want to mention. Jessie shares everything on our website. You have a new website, jessiegolden.com, which is great. And I know you share a lot of your supplements that you recommend. A lot of these things are non-toxic, holistic, as her brand, The Golden Secrets. I've literally, because that whole know, like, and trust factor, I've definitely bought a lot of the things you recommend, because I'm all about that. Like, when you trust somebody, you know that they've done their research. And I think that's the one thing, is we need to be our best advocate. We need to do our own due diligence to research things. You know about the passing of my dog, and when he had cancer and he was going to do, of course, we had to do the chemo. It's kind of like you don't have a choice, to be honest, when it's that progressive. But I remember doing the research myself. I found I'm so knowledgeable on all this stuff now.
Oh
Like,
my gosh. When you
diet
have to
wise.
go through it yourself, you learn so much. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what's great in general, is that, you know, don't believe everything that is told by Western or Eastern doctors. You need to do your own due diligence and care enough about yourself or your loved one to inform yourself and equip yourself with the most knowledge. So I know you did that, which is amazing, and you share all that. So of course, everybody go check out our website for recommendations. So circling back to self-love, because this is important, because I think you and I completely agree self-love is at the foundation of everything. To attract and have anything you want, it needs to start from that foundation. And I know this has trickled into your relationship with your husband now and all that. So if you were to leave with us your recommendations for cultivating and continuing to practice and deepen self-love, self-worth, what are some of your recommendations? Like, I know, of course, stillness and your practices you do, rituals, as you call them, are really that the things you do to cultivate that self-love. So what are some of those recommendations?
Yeah. I mean, I think there's just like daily self-care acts and rituals that you can do. But I love putting myself, kind of like I mentioned before, how would I treat my 7-year-old self? How would I treat little Jessie? Or what works for some people is, what advice would I give my best friend? And then take that advice to yourself. And then when it comes specifically to self-love, what hit me like a bullet was, I was pulling in a lot of relationships, a lot of men that were not a good fit, were not good relationships. And I read somewhere that the way you love yourself is the way your future partner will love you. Hit me like a ton of bricks. And I was like, oh, I'm taking myself to dinner. I'm going to treat myself good. And it changed the whole perspective, because I think we're a lot like, you know, we just want to be loved and we're like seeking it externally, but you really have to come to that place of self-love with yourself, I feel like, before your partner comes in. There are certain scenarios where you guys do it together, but that could be a little bit more of a challenging relationship. It's a very easier ride when you do the work yourself before you meet your life partner. But you know, it's just those little things. It's listening to yourself and checking in with yourself, with your intuition, seeing what it needs and what you want to do and what you want to eat and how you want to treat yourself, and just giving yourself those little extra self-love, every single day.
Yeah. And then, the whole a bit how you said you're very in tune with your body. And I know it's partly because of the rheumatoid arthritis, but for somebody that doesn't have that type of teacher, how would you recommend somebody gets more in tune with their body? What would you recommend as far as practices, rituals, or whatnot?
I mean, it's like, oh gosh, there's so many things that come to the top of my head. I mean, obviously yoga, I'm a yoga teacher. Yoga changed my life. I say yoga saved my life like a million times over. Um, Again, the reason why I love yoga is it's an internal practice. So you're able to like move the trauma through your body, move the energy through your body, get to know yourself. But it's also the things that I talk about with the golden secrets, like body gua sha. Like, have you ever stood in the mirror naked and like really gotten to know yourself?
I don't think many women have. No.
Yeah, like lube your body up and do some gua sha and like see what it feels like to massage the back of your leg. And like, what about your ankles? Like, have you ever given them some love? Like, there's areas of our body that we've never even explored or touched. And I think it's so important for a multitude of reasons, just to be into, but all of those little things help you become more in tune and aware of your body. I mean, before I found yoga, dance, and before I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis, dance helped me get in tune with my body. It's just that I ignored all those bodily signals. But any kind of movement or exercise or self-care ritual where your body is involved, like, can help you become more sensitive to what your body needs.
I love that. And you used to share something called the 5 to Thrive. What can you go through those? Because I think these are really powerful, of course.
Yeah. I like, over the years of like doing podcasts and like blogs, people would ask me like, well, what are like some tips?
Yeah.
And so I finally put it in an ebook, and I come back to these things all the time. So the number one is everything you're seeking is inside. Like, everything.
My favorite.
Like,
That's my favorite lesson.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just, even if you're listening to this or you're reading my book or you're reading, an amazing spiritual book, everything is leading you back inward. So it has to resonate with you. You have this inner compass that's going to guide you, and it guides you by lighting you up. Like, your body literally responds a certain way to certain things. So don't ignore that. The only way out is in. That's what I call it actually in the book. And then the second one is nature cures when a cure is possible. Stay as close to nature as possible every single day. I'm a huge advocate of sunshine, getting sunshine. We're looking at blue light all the time. Get outside. We used to spend like 98% of our times outdoors, and now we're spending 98% of our time indoors. But we need to get our eyes to the sky. We need to look far because we're looking close on our phones all the time. We need to root into the earth, take your rubber shoes off, let your feet touch the earth. If you garden, put your hands in the soil, grow your own food, eat seasonally, use natural products for your skin, for your house. Like, just stay as close to nature as possible. I feel like the further we stray from Mother Nature, the worse off we're going to be. So we really need to like connect with her every single day. The third one is look past your own eyelashes. And my grandmother used to say this to me. And I think whenever you're going through anything in your life, it's really easy to fall into like a victimhood mentality. But if we stay in that space, again, it becomes toxic. So one of the best ways to actually help yourself is to get out of your own way and help somebody else in need. And I think there's nothing greater about someone's character that helps somebody in need while they're going through their own stuff. It's just like the most beautiful thing. And the craziest thing is it shifts your energy, and you end up feeling better at the end. So you actually do help yourself. It's just this roundabout way of doing it. Affirmations, positive affirmations is the fourth one. kind of like what we were talking about earlier, the easiest way to do that is just by finding gratitude in the present moment, and just working on rewiring that brain for the positive, because it does work with practice. You will start to become more optimistic about life, and you'll start seeing the cup half full instead of half empty. And then last, surrender is your power. And this is the hardest lesson. But when we're going through something, I think it's really important to allow it to be your teacher. I think, like, for example, with dis-ease, this is very common. With cancer, with RA, with anything, with this virus that's going around right now, we want to fight it instead of just allowing it to teach us what it's supposed to teach us. Dr. Zach Bush, who's my favorite human on the planet, explains cancer and how cancer is the loneliest cell in the body, and how instead of fighting it and resisting it, we need to love it back into our body.
Oh my gosh, so fun. It's funny you share that, because I'll tell you after.
And it's just like, it's just like, oh my gosh, and that's kind of how I've chosen to look at this RA. Like, instead of fighting it, surrender is my power. Let it teach me what it's supposed to teach me. And by not resisting, it actually dissipates and it doesn't have that control of you. So those are the 5 to
Oh my
thrive.
gosh, all of those are so magnificent. And I think that everybody needs to really let those all sink in and really meditate on each one you shared, because they're so powerful in itself alone. Like if you just practice one of those, it could change your
Oh
life.
yeah.
It's so beautiful. And it reminds me of several things. Number one, when I had the Dr. Wayne Dyer daughters on my podcast, she shared about, if you want to, get out of grief or depression, is be of service. Because like you said, a roundabout way, you're helping somebody and you're ultimately helping yourself as well. And you're able to switch into more gratitude opposed to that grief and fear and sorrow you are in. And I remember when my dog recently passed away, first thing I did was contact Marley's Mutts, Zach Scow. And I said, I want to help. Like, how could I be of service? I just want to be around dogs and I want to be supportive. I just want to love on dogs. Like, I just, because I want to give like what my dog gave to me. I just want to pour that into every pit bull because he was a pit bull, and you know what I mean? So it's like, I remember that. And then also the first book I bought, the physical copy of, when this happened, is The Magic of Surrender, because I know that when I had this as well, my podcast, I thought it was the most life-changing interview and book. I didn't have the physical copy at this time, but surrender is one of those hardest things to do, but it is the most potent and powerful thing you could do and move into, because that's when the peace and the space comes to allow you to heal and move into gratitude, move into peace and all those things. So it's just so great that you share that, because I completely agree. And when you were talking about how Zach Bush was mentioning a cancer cell, Sage Dyer also shared how she healed bumps on her face. And the way she did that was talking love to them and saying like, please, thank you for the lesson you have served me. But it's time for you to leave. I let you go with love and whatever. And I remember when I heard this, that's what I started to do to my dog's cancer. Like, I was sending love to the cancer, like, thank you for the lesson you're teaching my dog and myself. Like, you've served your purpose, please be gone.
Yeah.
And it sounds so like woo woo, but you know what? If it switches your mindset to switch into gratitude, then it's worthy, right? So I love that. But yeah, so the 5 to Thrive is so powerful. And I know you said you have this on your blog. Is that right?
It's actually, I put it together as an ebook. So it's on thegoldensecrets.com.
Perfect. I'll include that in the show notes too, because I think it's so powerful to like pull that out and highlight it. So one of the things, I'm sure you've heard this 1,000 times, because it is the truth. You are a light. You shine so bright. It's so perfect that your last name is Golden, because you emulate all that, right? How do you stay in your light? If somebody were like, just in the simple terms, like, how do you stay in your light when the world is falling apart, or you, which we'll go into, your journey in the last year has been really trying and really challenging, to say the least, I'm sure. So how do you remain in this space of surrender and letting timing unfold as it may, and staying in the positive, staying in your beautiful light?
Thank you so much, by the way, for the compliment. Um, I think this is the journey. I think without darkness, there can't be light. So I think those that carry the light, like you, they have been through some stuff and they've come out the other end. Like they're not just walking around. Like those are my favorite people that have been through stuff and come and just and not let it jade them and not let them, become angry people. So the entire world right now is going through a huge opportunity to create more light in their life. So the bigger the challenge, I feel like the greater the opportunity. And that's how I choose to look at every challenging time in my life. Like, okay, how can I use this opportunity to create more life? It's how I respond to it. It's not the actual issue. So I just look at it at every challenge as an opportunity, and to practice what I preach and what I believe in and what I share, you know?
I love that. So can you share a little bit about your past year, some of
Yeah.
the challenges you endured, and possibly how they have unfolded, or whatever you want to share openly?
Yeah. So I've been really candid about this on Instagram, which was a journey for me to get to anyways. But just a little backstory for those of you that aren't following me, I'm pretty candid on social media. And I'm a very honest person. So even if like I'm not posting exactly, like I didn't take the picture exactly that day, like what I'm sharing is my vibe.
Very human.
And
Yeah.
I was going through some challenges in my life, and I was having a hard time not sharing it on social media. So I finally got to a place in my life where I talked with my family, and I even talked to my doctor, and I was like, I think I'm going to share this. Like, I think I need to share this, not only because I don't know how to be authentic without sharing, but my husband and I decided to try and get pregnant. And I'm 43 now. We started trying at 41. We got pregnant right away, which was a shock after 2 months of trying. And then we miscarried. And then the next time we tried, we got pregnant the first time, and then we miscarried. So I was like, okay, something's going on here. I was just grateful that I was able to get pregnant, because I had so many women that had children after I had my son that had a hard time. So I was just grateful that I was able to carry. And then my husband, or to get pregnant. And then my husband had to go to Canada for 6 months. And I had this like panic attack where I'm like, I'm going to turn 43 this year. He's leaving for 6 months. That means we can't try. And I was like, maybe I should just freeze my eggs and then they can genetically test them to see if they're good. Because I was thinking at this point in my life, they did all the other testing. My progesterone was okay. All the tests that they did were fine. So they said it's probably egg quality, which is something that no matter what you do, it's not like you could take all the progesterone in the world. If it's not a good embryo or a good egg, it's not going to work. Yeah. So I decided to go through this IVF journey, which was an insane decision looking back. My husband's gone, and I wasn't educated on it, and I thought it was going to be a much smoother ride. It was very intense, lots of medication, lots of appointments, lots of emotions, not knowing what to do. And then I didn't feel like myself because of the hormones. So my tools weren't working. Like I was calling my husband going like, I don't feel like myself. So like the normal Jesse's not even here. But when I was going through this, like one of the reasons why I decided to share on Instagram, when I went through the miscarriages, when I started IVF, I remembered all the women that had shared their miscarriages with me their IVF journey with me. And so when I went through it, I didn't feel so alone. And I called on their power and how I felt for them when they shared that with me. And I was like, if I can share this on social and one person sees it, that they're not alone and it's okay. And like, the conversation needs to be had. Like, miscarriages happen more times than not. And I cannot believe the secret tribe of people that have gone through IVF. Like, there's like a whole,
because a
like,
lot of people don't talk about it. You're right.
People don't talk about it. And all of a sudden I started sharing, and like all these women are coming on my DMs, and I'm like, there's a whole tribe out here of women that I tap into. But the process was much more intense than I had anticipated. And I'm coming to this place of like forgiving myself, but I realized a huge lesson that I learned in this past year is I don't make good decisions when I'm in a state of fear. And I was in a state of fear and panic going, I'm turning 43, my husband's leaving for 6 months, and I'm not patient. So I'm like, I just got to go do IVF. When really, I don't know if that was the best decision just yet. I have embryos on ice, which I'm really lucky and grateful about, but I haven't gone to the next phase just because there's more medication involved, and I didn't realize how sensitive I would be to the hormones.
Does it affect you with your rheumatoid arthritis? Did you notice some of that flaring up during the process, just out of curiosity?
You know what? I felt pretty good with that. It was more mental, which scares me more than anything.
Wow.
It was like I hadn't been on birth control since I was 22 or something. When I stopped birth control, it was like a veil had been lifted, and I was like, oh my gosh, I've been fighting this depression since I was 15, and it was the birth control. Like, so one of the things that a lot of the IVF places have you do is they have you go on birth control for like 10 days before the procedure to like make everything calm. And it just makes me wacky. It just makes me not feel good. I felt sad, and I'm not used to feeling that way. I mean, I wake up and I'm like, the sun is shining.
Yeah.
And like, when I wasn't doing that, I was like, something's wrong. But I knew I had the wherewithal to go, it's the medication, it will pass. But it also gave me so much sympathy for women that might not know that. Like, that are on birth control and they don't know that it can make you feel horrible.
So true. When our hormones are out of whack, it's almost like our PMS cycle. Like you never know what you're going to get when I'm PMSing, at least, but I'm definitely more on edge. I'm more irritable. And so our hormones affect so much. So I completely understand the ups and downs you were going through, but you are so brave going through it. And I think a lot of women, I understand. I'm 41, and we've talked about this conversation. I froze my eggs at 39, which is quite late to start freezing your eggs. But I knew I was like that same thing, like clock's ticking. I know, like once you're aware of, it's like, once you're aware of how the eggs work and that we only have the supply we have, and they do certainly get worse in quality. I hate to say worse. They get lower in quality as we age. It's a reality. It's nothing we can reverse. So once you know that, if you choose to freeze your eggs or go through the IVF process, it's a very stressful and heavy thing to do. But if it's the option you choose to, the route you choose to go, more power to you. But I think it's great, the lessons that will come out of it. I'm sure you tell me, did you think about divine timing and thing that however it's supposed to work out, that's possibly the lesson? Like, did you ever, have you used any of the eggs of the IVF process?
No, we haven't done anything yet. So, I mean, the lessons are endless. I'm like, it's so funny. Like when the, when the first miscarriage happened, I thought, really? Like, this is part of my story. Like, now I gotta be like, this is like my journey. And I'm like, oh shit. Okay. And then like the next one happened and I'm like, wow, okay. I'm in this tribe now, you know. Um, but just to circle back, because I feel like this is so important, why I think it needs to be a conversation, and I love that we're having this conversation, is I wish I knew more when I was younger. And you can choose to freeze your eggs. And there's a simple blood test now
Yeah.
that they can take to do your to test your AMH levels to see what your reserve is. I'm like, what? The first time I did that, it was at 42.
Yeah.
Like I never even thought that that was a thing. So there are things that you can do, you know, at whatever age you want to. There's blood tests. You don't have to necessarily, if you have a huge reserve, then you can relax a little bit.
Exactly.
There's
Yeah.
things you can do to empower yourself, and that's what I love sharing. But the lessons have been never ending with this whole journey. You know, when we decided let's try, it was the universe will happen, and I literally was like, it's probably going to take a year. When we got pregnant right away, I was shocked. Miscarrying, it's a real thing where it my spirit was shook. It took me a while to get back on my feet, and um I have so much sympathy for women that have gone through that. It's definitely hard. Um, and then I went through this phase where I'm going to do everything I possibly can to make myself the healthiest person and do all the medical research and all of that kind of thing. And then I kind of exhausted myself, and I came to a place of divine timing. Like,
Yeah.
all the things medically, nutritionally, spiritually. If you are meant to have a baby, the baby's going to show up irregardless of what you're doing. And that's what I mean by that comment. And so I'm in this state of surrender right now where I've kind of ran myself rampant, and kind of exhausted myself physically and emotionally. And my husband just came home, and I'm just like, I'm just like so grateful to have my family back. And I'm just like surrendering to what the universe is going to give me. Like it took me about a year to get to this place.
Well, you know what? It probably goes back to a little bit of your background, the discipline, the, making the way, being resourceful, like all those things that have got you where you are today have been those tools that you were probably always returned to. So what's so beautiful is that you're in this space of surrender. And you know how when people go on their honeymoons, like instantly they get pregnant. Why? Because they're not stressed, they're relaxed, like no pressure, like all these things, they're surrendering in the moment. And I think that's truly when the gifts kind of show up, surprisingly. And I do think there is something to be said to doing what you can to be the healthiest, to, provide a home for the baby. I think there's a lot to that. A lot of, that could be an episode in itself, like what certain things you could do to make sure that the environment is right, which has a lot to do with your mindset, like your negativity in your life and removing those things, because that's just causing stress on your body. And stress to me is, I think, the most potent, disgusting thing we could have in our body that literally leads us to disease. So there are things that you should be doing, but surrendering is probably exactly where I think the gifts will reveal itself, surprisingly. So, and I think it's, as you touched on earlier, the reason why you like sharing the IVF process is that we could do a simple test to just know what our reserve is. And that, let alone that information could help you decide what to do at any age. Like you could do that test at 30, you could do that test at 40. And from there, you can make that decision. I remember when I did the test, it was, for my age, pretty high. And so I was blessed to have the outcome. I don't know the quality of the eggs, but the outcome I got at 39. So I've heard people that at age 35, their reserve is very low. So if you get that information, then you could choose to at least freeze your eggs. At least it's an option. That's wonderful to know. The more you know, the better you do. Right. So
Exactly.
yeah. So I heard this on an episode as I was preparing for this interview. I wanted to hear some of your recent interviews, and you talked about something that I wanted to pull out because out of curiosity, breast implants. Okay. So the reason why I pulled this out, because one of those things that have come up a lot is breast implant illness.
Mhm.
And I have actually a close friend of mine that when she removed hers, she was able to get pregnant naturally when she was doing the IVF and everything. Because when your body, as you know, when you put in, if we only knew this, because I have breast implants, I got them, I think 6 years ago, and which is crazy. I even got them as well as you talked about, but it's so crazy that we didn't think of this thing, putting a foreign object in our body and their body will reject it. Hello. Like it seems like common knowledge that why didn't we know this? But it's because for years and years and years, this has been done for so long and nothing has been said about it. And it's almost seemed like, oh, you know, it works. So it's just kind of ironic. So I'm just curious, have you thought about that in regards to your the arthritis and also possibly that your body is not able to hold it? Like, I'm just curious. And I know
Yeah.
that's kind of a big question, and I
Yeah,
hope it's
huge.
not.
I mean, no. I love talking about this. I love talking about root cause.
Mhm.
Um, just to be clear, I was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis years before I got the breast implants. So a lot of people think, oh, it's breast implant illness. Luckily, not that I know of, they haven't caused me any issues.
That's great.
Saying that, I can't wait to get rid of them. I'm waiting to see if I can have one more baby
Yeah.
because breastfeeding is so important to me. And I just felt, I mean, now looking back, it's taken me 2 years. I probably could have done the surgery, but you have to heal for at least a year before you could have a baby.
Oh,
Like,
wow.
I just wouldn't want to explant and then have to wait to have a baby. So there's just a lot going on there. But root cause is huge. With rheumatoid arthritis, when I got diagnosed, it's like, let's look at the, well, I didn't have breast implants yet, but let's look at the root canals. Let's look at, my house. Let's look at all these things. I recently found out about a year and a half ago that the town that I grew up in had a toxic water system. And there's thousands of us diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis and cancer. We have a private Facebook page. We're trying to get an attorney to do like there's thousands of us from 1978 to current time. Our water system had all these toxins in it and stuff. There was a peace of mind when I actually got invited to this Facebook group and saw that there was so many other people with rheumatoid arthritis and autoimmune disease, because it was able for me to go, okay, that is where it came from. It's not something, when you get diagnosed, you want to blame yourself. And so it's almost nice to have like, oh, okay, this could be the cause as to why. Moving forward, after I had my son, I breastfed for 4 years. I was a single mom. I was still modeling. I was on contract with a lingerie company, got diagnosed with RA. I was down to 90 pounds, not walking. I was sick, tried to build myself back up, and had completely lost my boobs. I was like, I don't know what to do. This is my decision based on fear again. And I had this panic that I was going to lose my contract, which was a residual income, literally paying my bills for me and my son. And I seeked friends that already had breast implants, and I was seeking women to tell me it's okay. Yeah. But my instinct was like, that is the craziest thing on the planet. So when I went to the doctor, I was like, can you just make me look like what I looked like before I had a baby? I literally gave him a picture of myself prior, and it worked. For years, it was the best thing I ever did. My career was insane. I was able to take care of my son. And then I started doing all the yoga campaigns, and my boobs were never like I was like, I don't want ginormous boobs. I want to be able to hide them and take them. I literally told the doctor, I want to be able to hide them and take them out when I need them. Like literally that was for work.
Yeah.
So it worked, it was great. And I've come to a place in the last 2 years where I just don't need them anymore. I physically don't need them. And then all this research came out about connections with cancer and breast implant illness, and it just doesn't feel good, which has opened up an entirely new opportunity for me to love myself.
Mm.
And a lot of people think that women with breast implants are confident and full of themselves and love themselves. It's actually the opposite for me right now. I'm embarrassed of my boobs. I don't like them, and I wish I could get them out. But I've realized that that's not going to happen until after I have a kid and I'm breastfed and I breastfeed him, and then I'm going to get them out. So I'm having to come to a place of acceptance and loving these fake boobs. It's like a whole nother area has opened up for me to practice self-love.
Wow. I love that you share that. And I think a lot of people could probably resonate with that. And I completely agree. When you share all this, I feel like has been my path as well. And a lot of what I think about too. I wish I never did it. How stupid. And now it's like, I want them out too. And it's like, I don't even exactly, I'm like, I like being flat or not flat, but smaller chested,
just normal, just normal. But I'm also thinking about, I know what I looked like after breastfeeding. So I'm like, in a perfect world, if I'm able to have another baby and breastfeed, then I can explant and get a lift.
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah.
And be natural and free but I feel it. And through you, I can even have more compassion for myself, because it's like, this is where we are right now.
Yeah.
And it's such an interesting thing, because people associate plastic surgery a certain way. And little do they know, until I start sharing, that I don't like these boobs. I don't want them. And it just opens up this whole other opportunity to practice self-love,
self-acceptance. Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think it's so powerful, and I think it's so necessary to share these little things, because it's true. Like, as you mentioned, you share on social media and you share what you do so that other people could relate to you and have a more human connection, that your story could reach somebody and impact them and help them on their journey and accepting themselves and developing that self-love. So I think it's so critical. Okay. So of course I don't want to leave out the most important thing, which is it's not the most important. Everything's so important. What am I talking about? But I want to talk about your brand, The Golden Secrets. As I said, I am such a fan. I am. I've been using it for, I don't know, several years now. Yeah. My boyfriend knows you. He knows who Jessie Golden is. He knows I love you, and I love The Golden Secrets. So can you tell us a little bit? What I think is so amazing about your brand is the foundation and your mission behind it, because it is really meaningful and it's very intentional. And I know for so long you handcrafted this, and you finally switched over to a manufacturer, which is a big change for you. But just sharing a little bit about the mission, and then also, because I know a lot of your products, your beauty products, contain oil. Obviously not harmful oil, it's beneficial oil. But I would love to, the second part of the question is, why oil? And I know a lot of people have this idea that oil would cause acne and cause you to break out and just clog your skin, but you share obviously something very differently about that.
Yeah. Oh gosh, I never intended on being a business owner, let alone a skincare owner. And when I realized that this was the path, talking about listening to your intuition, it's like, this just kept coming up. People were like, what's your golden secret? And I had been handcrafting products for myself since high school. And I was like, oh my gosh, I guess this is like where I'm headed. And I made a conscious decision. And I think I had a bad taste in my mouth about the beauty industry, because I was a model for so long. And I was like, I don't want to be like that. All the companies that I was the face of for years, where it's just, a cream in a bottle, the owner didn't formulate it, some chemist formulated it, there's a bunch of toxins in it, the model who's the face of the company never used it in their life. It's all marketing. Like, I
Mhm.
was just like, I don't want to be like that. Like, that was a very conscious decision. So I was like, how can I make it more than just organic natural oils? And how can I get the people that are using these designer commercialized stuff? So I was like, I'm going to use the hippie, organic, goody stuff that I love, but I'm going to put it in luxurious packaging to get those people. And then I'm going to give affirmations for every single product so that it makes it go beyond the skin. So as you're applying your oil and you're like wanting to point out all the wrinkles and whatever else, I want you to say, I am beautiful, I am youthful, I radiate an everlasting youthful joy. Like, I want you to say positive things to yourself so that we instill these beautiful rituals of self-love. You take the product as a tool to do the work. So that was the first thing that I did. And then luckily, as we grew, originally we didn't even have packaging. I was like, I want reusable bags. And then as I grew, I was like, okay, I need outside packaging. So it's FSC certified, which is like the highest regard for paper packaging. And then we started giving back a percentage to charities all year round. And now we plant a tree for every order. Everything's sustainable. I'm trying to get a climate positive certification now. I feel like if you're a company in 2022, it is your job to go beyond whatever it is that you're doing. You have to be sustainable. You have to be conscious about everything. You have to be like, I had a team meeting yesterday and we were talking about this and I was like, but I still want to do more. Like, we have to continue to evolve. Like, maybe, this isn't working now we have to. So we're constantly in the hunt of how we can do better and be better and make the world a better place. And going back to what we talked about, self-love is the foundation. Through skincare, I'm trying to teach that. And I want people to feel good about their purchase. Like, they get an email where they get to plant a tree wherever they want. And then, you're giving back to 3 different charities at checkout. And I think finally we're getting to a place where consumers are wanting to support brands and companies like that, where it's more meaningful. The energy of the company matters. The energy of the people behind it matters. Like, where you're putting your money, I truly believe, is the world you're creating. So all those conscious decisions matter. And then to answer your question about oil,
Yeah.
I've always been a huge advocate of oil. I've used oil since high school. I felt like I was always kind of this weird hippie kid that was just doing things differently. And then as I went into modeling, everyone was using like La Mer and Lancome. And I was
right. Yeah.
Using like oils that I would get at the health food store and stuff. But for me, I feel like oils lock in and just get to the skin and moisturize the skin much better than like a cream. With skincare, you always want to go light to heavy. So if you do want to put a cream on top of the oil to like lock everything in, you can. But a biggest myth is about oils breaking people out. A lot of people that have acne are actually deficient in a fatty acid called linoleic acid, which is in the Youth Beauty face oil. So a lot of people that have acne start using the Youth Beauty and all of a sudden their skin is clearing up and they're like, what? This is the exact opposite of what I've been told my entire life. So I feel like, unfortunately, the beauty industry has sold us the problem and the solution for a long time, letting people believe that if they had acne, they needed to dry their skin out, and then our skin overcompensates and actually gets more oily and then creates acne, and it's like becomes this vicious cycle. So the golden secrets is really all about working with your skin and not against it. Nothing strips the skin or the acid mantle. Once you start doing that, then the skin is going to react and you're going to get acne and hyperpigmentation and redness and all these kinds of things. So less is more. high quality ingredients, consistency, and self-love. That's the remedy.
Oh, so great. And I love it. So of course, everybody go check that out. I will leave the link in the show notes with a special discount code. So good. Okay. So I don't know how much more time you have. I have like a couple more questions. Are
Oh,
you
I'm
good?
fine. I'm fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm just going to soak in all the goodness. So one thing I think is really important to touch on, as we know, during the pandemic, a lot of people were awakened by things just not working and really being able to be more quiet and notice the things that weren't really fulfilling them and um, that were throwing them off alignment. And I know, being that you're a business owner, entrepreneur, a single mom for so long, you trained yourself to do all the things, always be in the doing, in the motion of, tackling the things you need to do. What I've recognized of you and what you share a lot is you are very much present in the being now. And I
Mhm.
don't know when that transitioned in your life, but if you could kind of share on that of how people could, because this is when I talk about alignment, one of the things I shared at the beginning of the top of the year, I shared that I wasn't releasing a podcast episode, and it was very intentional. And for me to not release an episode every week was like me not being accountable to my commitment, right? But I sat back and I realized that right now I need to be in the feelings I'm in. I need to grieve. I need to allow the space for me to flow into what feels in alignment with my true self and not force anything and not do all the things. I need to slow down and just be. And it's a really important lesson that teaches you to be in true alignment. And so I'm just curious, how have you cultivated that in your life? And what can you share to others to possibly slow down to, instead of humans doing, as they say, be a human being?
Yeah. Well, I think resting is productive too. And that's been a huge lesson for me because in the household I grew up in, resting or napping equaled laziness and depression.
Oh, wow.
So there was no resting. It was like I remember taking a nap one time and my mom's like, "Are you doing drugs?" And it's like, "No, I just danced 12 hours." Like, it was like, so I have this really it's interesting because my husband has helped a lot because he's like a cat. He's like takes cat naps all day long. And so I've learned a lot. And through this pandemic of my family and I getting extremely close because we've spent so much time together in the last 2 years, um, that too has helped me like be in the moment and just realize what's important. Because if I'm up to my own self, like if it's just me, I would probably work 24 hours. Like I'm sick like that. So when I have my family and like I want to be with them and I want to be present. But to answer your question, I feel like unfortunately the hardest times in my life is what has taught me those things, like having the rheumatoid arthritis or going through this IVF thing. Like for me to choose me while I'm trying to have a baby is easy. Like I don't like I'm fine with putting boundaries up and like not posting or not doing a podcast or telling people no. Like those boundaries are solid. But just for myself, I'm still working on that. Like there's still some lessons that need to be learned there. But everything always comes back to the 5 to thrive, like to get there, like just connecting with nature and um tuning in and meditation and mindfulness. And it doesn't have to be extreme. Like my house is pretty busy most days, so I do walking meditations where I don't talk on the phone and I don't listen to a podcast while I'm walking. I just zone out, and that seems to be what's working for me right now. But just finding that time for yourself so you could check in. Otherwise, we don't hear it. We
So
don't hear
true.
that voice. Yeah.
So true. And speaking of the walking meditation, I remember because I usually like to multitask and be productive and listen to something empowering as I go on a walk. I used to
Which
do
is
that.
fun too. That's really
Yeah,
fun.
there's a time and a place for that. I think
Yeah.
that's great. But I remember this one time that I intentionally was like, I'm going to leave my cell phone at home. I'm just going to go on a walk with my dog and just be in my thoughts and just, let myself go where I go. And I remember I got a total download, and it was literally what I needed to hear. And it's only because I didn't take my phone and I wasn't listening to something did that happen. So we have to allow that space or those gaps for us to hear our own thoughts clearly, right?
That's when I gain the most clarity.
Yeah.
Walking is my place. Like a yoga teacher said to me once when I was pregnant with my son, she said, if you ever have a problem, go on a walk and walk until you have a resolve.
Ooh.
And I took that to heart. And I would walk, like I just started walking like crazy. But that's when I gain the most clarity. That's when I hear that inner voice, like you're talking about in the downloads and stuff like that. It's my favorite place.
Absolutely.
And
And
that's
in
productive.
nature too. Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. Okay. So my one last question before the final question is one thing I really recognize of you and what you share, and it's so beautiful. And I love, like, I even share this with my boyfriend because I think it's just so cute. You and your husband are just so adorable, and you radiate together, you complement each other, and it's just the most beautiful thing. And what I think is such a beautiful dynamic is this feminine and masculine energy that you know that you both embody. And I'm just curious, what would you say that how do you, because I know being an entrepreneur, it's very easy for us to be in that masculine energy. How do you switch that in your relationship? Like, how do you maintain this feminine dynamic in your relationship? Like, what can you recommend, or what's your secret sauce?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I lived in the masculine my entire life.
Yeah.
And I was really confused about what the masculine and what the feminine was, to be honest with you, because I was raised by a strong feminine but masculine woman who like ran everything, but she always looked like Venus walking. Like she was gorgeous and like well always put together, like way more put together than I am. And so I was always confused about like I always pictured like almost like my roles were confused because she was so feminine but played the masculine role. And I feel like I just kind of fell into that same character. Um, so I attracted a lot of more feminine men a lot of my life because I was so in the masculine. And then being a single mother, I had to play the dad, and there was a lot going on. And I remember making a conscious decision like, I don't want a feminine man. I want to be in a place of, which is fine, by the way, but I wanted somebody that I felt safe with and that I felt that real masculine energy. So I remember I consciously went into the feminine, like started wearing more dresses and just being more feminine, not being as rigid, being more flowy, receiving, allowing. And naturally, like our relationship just enabled that. Like I don't have to consciously think about it. My best friend noticed it right away. As soon as we started dating, she was like, oh my gosh, I see little Jessie. Like I see, like I was twirling my hair basically. I was very feminine and cheery and da da da. Before him, I was very solid. I had to be grounded and rooted. And that's when I kind of knew that he was the one. Is like he allowed me not even to be in the feminine, but he allowed me also to just be in this like spirit inner child Jessie place that I like to be. That's more free and I don't have to think as much because he's got it under control.
Ah, that's so great. And you see it. And I think that's a great thing to notice, that if a woman naturally moves into her feminine, generally our partner will hold that space as the masculine male. So
Yeah.
if you choose that dynamic, it could easily happen by just naturally switching into it. So I think it's beautiful. Okay. I've asked you so many questions. This is just so good. Like I said, you have so many journeys, so many nuggets to share. Like I said, she's a holistic practitioner, like she has that all figured out, and so many things to learn from that. And then of course your just journey with rheumatoid arthritis, and of course self-love, and so much, so much. So my final question that I always ask my guests, and I'm so curious what you'll say to this. I don't know if I asked in the previous interview, but if you were to leave one piece of advice, it could be anything under the sun that you feel anybody needs to hear right now. It could be something you already said because you've already shared such valuable advice, or something else really powerful that you feel somebody needs to hear right now.
Two things are coming to mind, actually. We touched on it earlier about self-love and our imperfections. And what I've noticed with myself and other people that I admire and think are beautiful, it's actually when they embrace their imperfections and love them, like kind of like we were talking about Dr. Zach Bush, like love them back into your body. So it's not just about like noticing the positives, but it's about embracing the flaws too. You know, like that's been a humbling experience for me, like with my hands and surgery and rheumatoid arthritis and my ever-changing body, is just having to constantly shift into a state of self-love and embrace all those flaws, because that's actually what makes me beautiful. And that's the trick. And then last, I would say, follow your light, like follow what lights you up. So many people, I think, feel like they need to do what society says or their parents say or this or that, and they're ignoring that inner compass. And that inner compass is like guiding us. So if it's like animated in any way or lighting up in any way, as crazy as it seems, pay attention to it, because I think that's probably where you're supposed to go.
Beautifully said. I completely agree to both those things 100%. And it's so beautiful. I love it. Jesse, I so appreciate you. You know, I absolutely adore you, and everything you share is just, it's so impactful. The little things really, you know, you put a lot of thought into what you share and how you show up and what you embody. And so, you know, the good, the bad, and everything in between, it, like you just shared, all the imperfections is really what makes us so beautiful. And I completely agree. So thank you for sharing your light and your vulnerability with us and all the goodness. I
Thank you
appreciate
so much for having
you.
me.
You're so welcome.